Grudem, a noted Christian theologian, he talks about 5 wrong views about Christians and government. The first one being that government should compel religion. Do we think that's the biblical view? Grudem says it is not. What do we think? What do you guys think? Government should compel religion, that we should be living in a theocracy and Christians should be advocating for that. Is that the biblical view?
I think
I don't
not
think
until
so.
Jesus is on the throne. Once Jesus is on the throne, then he can just say that that's the correct view of politics.
So what was going on with Israel then?
Well, we've got now a theonomist might be listening to this going, well, yeah, we should impose the Mosaic law on current society. The problem is the Mosaic law was not given to us. It was given to Israel. And so while there are principles that carry over, especially those that are affirmed by Christ and the apostles in the New Testament, to say we can just make a direct correlation between Mosaic law and our situation today is, I think, very erroneous. I mean, seriously, are we going to tell people how to plant crops and how far apart their livestock has to be on the farm? Clearly, that's not what we're to be worried about. So I'm reluctant to say we should be forcing anybody into a religious view.
Yeah, I think that Jesus makes this plain in the New Testament. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar and give to God what is God's. Jesus made it plain, my kingdom is not of this earth. If that were the case, my followers would rise up and join me. And Jesus makes clear that in this time of history, that theocracy is not the goal. It's not the aim. The Lord had a very unique purpose and plan for the nation of Israel, and so desired to consecrate a nation of his own people and give them certain dietary restrictions and ceremonial holidays to observe. And this amounted to the nation of Israel being very distinct in the ancient world from other pagan nations. But there is no expectation from a biblical standpoint that is to be the model Christians should follow, or it's what they should be pursuing here and now. So I don't think that the Bible prescribes a government should compel religion political outlook. What about, does the Bible say government should exclude religion? Like the biblical position is you have government and you have religion, or you have state and religion, and they should have nothing to do with one another. Is that a proper view?
Sounds like the non-overlapping magisteria view, to borrow from the philosophy of religion. No, I don't think that's a good view because, number one, it's impossible. It's literally impossible because everybody has a worldview. Everybody has a faith of some kind. And yes, some people are members of a particular religion that has a codified creed and things like that. But every worldview, there's sort of this myth out there that there's like a neutral, unbiased, secular position out there that's just like the obvious, like post-enlightenment view that everybody, like we all agree, right? Like we all agree these are the values that we want to uphold. And to sort of take that position is to ignore history, basically, to ignore the ways that those values have developed. And many have been pointing this out, Tom Holland and many historians, just that we are swimming in the cultural milieu of Christian values. The reason that slavery has ended as a legal practice in the modern world is because of the work of Christians fighting for Christian values that have become cultural values, but they are distinctly Christian values. And so the idea that there should be a separation just ignores the way that our country has developed, the way that every country basically in history has developed. And it's literally not possible to represent some sort of worldview, some sort of perspective when you're advocating in politics.
Mm-hmm. Well, Matthew, just to give you an example that backs up precisely what you're saying, take the issue of abortion. The state either recognizes the humanity of the unborn and thus protects the unborn, or it doesn't and it permits killing them. There's no neutral ground there. You've got to pick a side. But even philosophically, there's no neutral ground. Think of it this way. The pro-life side argues, its philosophical anthropology goes like this: all humans have value because they're human. They're not valuable because they can do a certain function at a certain level, perform at a certain level, have a certain level of cognitive awareness. Rather, they are human and valuable simply because of the kind of creatures they are. Their value is intrinsic to their nature as a human being. The other view has the position that being human means nothing. All that matters is having cognitive function, and therefore an ape might be a person with rights, but not a newborn or a fetus or a person with Alzheimer's disease. But here's the thing that you need to notice. Notice that both sides are using philosophical reflection to answer the very same question: what makes humans valuable in the first place? You have to do metaphysics to answer that question. There's no way around it. So to say government's got to be completely free of any metaphysical considerations is just not workable in the real world in which we live.
Yeah, and you think about this, I don't know, naive hope that you could have a purely unbiased secular state and government that's not contaminated by religion at all. Well, to have that or pursue that, that must follow a firm theological conviction. The conviction being either that there is no God, or we don't know who the God is, or and this is probably an and in this one. And if there is a God, that God or gods surely does not care how we order ourselves in a civil way. Those are some profound theological convictions that you have that produced this. So to your point, Matthew, there's no way to create like this purely secular government that's free of any kind of metaphysical assumptions, philosophical beliefs, religious convictions, theological convictions. It's all going to be nested in that. So it's not practical, I think, at all. So maybe before we get on to what does it look like then, if it's not possible, and religion and theological beliefs to some degree are going to permeate our political systems, how do we do that? Well, maybe before we get to that, what about maybe the Christian objection that all government is just evil and demonic, and we should not have government at all? And it's kind of like only something we have because we live in a fallen and broken world, but it is inherently evil in its nature. What about that?
Well, Mike, just to back up a step, even the claim that the government must be free of all metaphysical considerations is a metaphysical statement about the nature of reality. So the claim is somewhat self-refuting that critics are bringing to the table when they say government's got to be free of any metaphysical considerations. As to the idea that all government is bad, all government is certainly imperfect. It is all certainly infused with sinful tendencies. But the mistake people make is to assume from that it follows that there aren't some governments that aren't better than others. The reality is some governments are better than others. Some political parties are better than others. Some candidates are better than others. There's no perfect party, no perfect candidate, but it doesn't follow there aren't degrees of rightness and wrongness in the system and in the candidates themselves.
It's like saying, you don't want to vote for the lesser of two evils. Well, that's your only option, is to vote for the lesser of two evils in every election, and it's a lot better than voting for the greater of two evils. So,
well, and I might amend that just a little bit, Matthew. I think my
Yeah.
friend Kevin Bywater puts it real well. Christians aren't voting the lesser of two evils. We're voting to lessen evil. The choice is
yes.
lessen evil
Yes.
or not lessen it or see it promoted. So we're voting to lessen evil. And that's always a good thing. That fits with our biblical responsibility to promote good and lessen evil insofar as we can, given the current cycle we find ourselves in politically.
All right. So that seems to me a pretty reasonable view that government is not inherently evil. There are going to be systems of government or styles of government, perhaps, that are better and worse than another. And whatever system you're in is going to have fallen, sinful people. And so there's the opportunity for it to be corrupted, but it is not itself inherently evil. Now, hey, real quick, I know we're rushing through these, so if you're watching online and you don't care for these kind of short responses, push back, challenge us, ask some questions, ask us to elaborate, or tell us why we're wrong. We're happy to go back and forth with you on that. Another objection, though. Okay, so let's say, okay, fine, government, whatever, it's not inherently evil, but Christians should be focused on evangelism and not politics. What say you to that view?
Matt, you go first on this one.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I do think our primary purpose in life ought to be to glorify God and to make him known. And so I do think that there are probably a lot of people who have made their lives about politics and have forgotten about the gospel, forgotten about evangelism. And I don't think that's good or right or good. But on the flip side, I think those who think that they can just be only interested in evangelism, only interested in those sorts of things, and not think about how our actions actually affect the world. That you have real causal power to, especially in a constitutional republic, to vote in various ways to lessen the evil in the world. Maybe if we lived in a pure dictatorship where it was just like, you know what, it literally doesn't matter what you do, maybe then it'd be like, all right, well, forget about politics. But like, no, actually, like, it literally matters what you're going to vote on. And we'll be talking about Amendment 4 here later tonight, because I think that's one very, very clear case where literally your vote could mean saving somebody's life. And not just somebody, but many, many, many people's lives. So, yeah, I think they're not mutually exclusive. Yeah, we need to think.
Good point, Matthew. I also think that a lot of people who say we should only do evangelism and never worry about politics think that they can do evangelism without assuming the security that comes from the rights that flow from a constitutional republic. When free speech rights are curtailed, you lose the ability to get the gospel out there, take a stand on moral issues like marriage, like transgender surgeries on children, like abortion. They assume that they're going to still be able to do the gospel minus any political considerations, and that's simply not true. For example, several years ago, when the state of California mandated that pregnancy centers must advertise for abortion services, something that diametrically went opposed to their worldview and their religious beliefs, well, the state of California just rushed in, and before the Supreme Court overturned it, thankfully, the state was forcing centers to say to clients that came to them, hey, we'll refer you to an abortion clinic if you don't want to have our services. You can't just assume you're going to be able to share the gospel if you lose the freedoms that come with a constitutional republic. And that's something we need to keep in mind. I think we also need to keep this in mind, that it's not always a one-way street when it comes to evangelism. Yes, it's true that people come to Christ by hearing the preaching of the gospel, but I've also had colleagues of mine that came to Christian faith because they saw the witness of the church standing against evil, and that drew them to take a deeper look at Christianity. They said, if these people are so committed in their worldview that they will stand up for helpless human beings at great personal cost, I need to find out what these people have bought into. Maybe there's something there I need to take a deeper look at. So the evangelism street can actually go two ways, not just one.